Howdy. With this video, I want to go over the schedule real quickly, then go over essay number 1. Make sure you know where all the material is and what I'm looking for there. Doing this video on Thursday, February 9th. For tonight, you should be turning in response number 7 on Flannery O'Connor. And again, I'm not actually up at midnight or anything, so tomorrow's fine. For the 13th, Monday, we're going to be doing a discussion board on the postmodern writers, Sedaris and Egan. Notice with Egan, you're just reading the first 6 sections of her work. It's one of the options for the essay. But if you read through the first 6 sections, you know if you're going to like it or not. And you'll get the idea of what we're looking at there. It's interesting she writes this short story as a series of tweets. Because that's how we process information, so why shouldn't art, particularly postmodern art, match the way people are getting their information these days? Kind of an interesting approach to creative fiction. We'll do a discussion board for response number 8. Part of that discussion board is going to be you telling me which topic you're thinking about using for essay number 1. So you're going to have to watch this video and read through the material before you can do that discussion board post. So that's kind of how we're going to start essay number 1. After that, for next Thursday, you should have your topic going. You should be working on the essay. Probably going to have you send me your thesis statement, or at least what you think your thesis statement's going to be. Then we'll work on the essay. The draft's due on the 23rd. I'll assign peer reviews where we'll switch out papers with other students. And basically, I'll attach a peer review sheet to the drafts, send them out. You'll answer those questions, send them back. Try and help each other out. Then revise your essays accordingly, and then essay number 1's due on the 2nd there. Then we'll start the drama. Spring break's a week later than it usually is. That's why we're having to start drama before spring break. It's kind of weird. Usually there's a nice break there, and then we start drama afterwards. But we're going to start with the dollhouse there. But that's the schedule. For essay number 1, excuse me. I just opened up this material for essay number 1, Spring 23 area on the content page. You can navigate it over here on the left too. We'll look at the assignment sheet first. I'm going to go ahead and download it. And here you'll see the basic assignment. No, I don't need that. But for this first essay, you're going to write a 1,000-word minimum. And generally, word count's not a problem with this one. If for some reason you're not making a word count, you're probably not developing your paragraphs very well. It's kind of an early indicator there's a problem with your paragraphs. But it's going to be a 6-paragraph literary research essay using MLA formatting. We've been practicing that with the response papers, right? On one topic on the given topic sheet, we'll look at here in a second. Basically what you're going to do is you're going to pick one of the short stories from the assignment sheet and match it to one of the given movements on the topic sheet. Kind of what we've been doing all along. You're just going to do it more formally. You're going to have to define the movement, and to do that, you're going to use 2 sources other than your textbook: dictionaries, encyclopedias, class lectures. For all you know, I just had fun making all that up just for my own personal amusement. I didn't. I'd be fired if I did. But I want you to do your own research, and you're going to kind of become an expert on this particular movement you choose. To search for .edu sites, you should employ .edu sites when possible. When you do a Google search, all you got to do is something like American realism or whatever movement you're going to do. Then you type in site:/.edu, and that'll limit your search to websites with .edu in the web address, the URL. So you kind of see it doesn't mean they're particularly good sources, but it's a good way to kind of get away from the Wikipedia Spark Notes kind of stuff. It's not like Wikipedia Spark Notes are evil or anything, but generally they're kind of surface level and don't get into good depth. They're not going to work. They're not going to work well for this essay. And you'll start going through these sources trying to define your movement. But that site:/.edu is a great way to use Google to limit, the endless searching you can do if you just type in American realism. You might also add the term literature to your search to limit to literature, particularly if you get into the romantics or something like that, or modernists. There's entire websites dedicated to just modernist art, painting. So you want to make sure you're on the literary side. But within your essay, you're going to define the given movement and then relate the movement to the short story in 3 ways. You're free to decide the short story does not represent the movement, so it doesn't have to be all. You don't have to be all in on that. For example, Flannery O'Connor, she displays a lot of existentialist ideology, but she's also kind of arguing against it at the same time, and she's that's part of the tension of her writing in many ways. What makes her a really good writer is that she's kind of stuck in the middle trying to figure all this out. But you're not going to summarize a short story. You're assuming your readers have read it, which they should have. Or at least I have, right? So don't give me a lot of plot summary. Don't give me any plot summary. I've read these stories. And we're going to look at a sample essay here in a second, but and we'll look at the topic choices here as well. But the first paragraph of this essay, and I'm telling you what I want in every paragraph, so make sure you're doing that. With the next two, it won't be quite so formulaic. But I'm pretty much telling you what I want here. The first paragraph should define the literary movement using at least two good sources. It may take more than two to get a good definition. Something like existentialism, it takes a while to get a good definition going. It may take 3 sources or maybe 4. 4 is getting a little, you might end up having too much of a definition there. But that's all your first paragraph is going to do. You may not even mention your short story at all in that first paragraph. In fact, you probably won't. The second paragraph, you're going to introduce the short story you choose and provide your thesis statement, and you're going to relate the short story to your definition of the movement in 3 ways. Very important for this essay, your 3 thesis points have to come directly from that definition. You can't just provide kind of a weak definition in your first paragraph, then pull out thesis points out of thin air. They should come directly from that first paragraph. The third, fourth, and paragraphs are each going to discuss one way the story relates to the movement, coming straight from that thesis statement. So your first thesis point is going to be your third paragraph. And you're going to spend a paragraph developing how you think that particular element of the movement is reflected in the short story. Your sixth paragraph is going to be your brilliant concluding paragraph. We'll talk about that more once we start writing. Do not repeat your thesis in your conclusion. Don't go back and summarize your essay. I've already read it. It's a short essay. It's very formulaic, so I've seen your thesis. I've seen a body paragraph on each one of your thesis points. You don't have to go back and repeat it again. I get it. What's the big picture? Why should we care about your analysis here? What's it have to do with those of us living here in 2023? But we'll talk about that a little bit more once people start writing. Some basic requirements. You have to quote at least 3 times from the story, probably in those body paragraphs. Sorry. I've been talking all day and I'm losing my voice a little bit. But you should quote at least 3 times from the short story, probably at least once in each of the body paragraphs to support what you're saying and show us where you're getting your ideas from. You should employ, and that's beyond the quotes you're going to be using in the first paragraph when you're defining your movement from your sources. You should employ all those fun punctuation. There's a punctuation handout sheet on the help resources page, on the content page, if you're not familiar with these. You should use at least 5 of the fiction terms, and that's up there on the content page. And you should avoid any of the following words: I, you, your, get, got, or it. It shouldn't be used in first person. None of this I personally think, or when I read the essay, I see this. Like, it's your name on the essay. It's kind of implied, right? There's no reason to say that again. It also makes your opinion, it kind of waters down your writing a little bit. No you or your. You're not assuming your reader's seeing the same thing you are. There's no reason to do a shift. If you're quoting somebody using these words, that's fine, but you should be using them yourself. No get or got. There's always a better verb than got. I got a pizza. I got COVID. I got a girlfriend. I got this, I got that. There's really more precise verbs you could be using there. We kind of use got as a kind of a quick, easy access verb. We don't want, we're being kind of verbally lazy. We don't want to do that in our writing. And you can always remove it from your sentence and write a better sentence. Again, this does not apply if you're quoting somebody, just you using these words in the essay. So that's the basic assignment. The topic choices. I'm going to download these. They're on a separate sheet. Make that a little bit bigger. And you're going to match one of these short stories to one of these movements. And again, you only go do it to one of these movements. Some of these short stories, you have options to, you'd like here to either do Harlem Renaissance or American Modernism. Don't try and do both. It won't work for you. You're going to end up writing a very long essay that's not very focused. So as we kind of done these readings, there's probably some you're kind of like, man, I hope I'd never have to read that kind of stuff again. But hopefully one or two of these you're kind of like, that's kind of cool. I want to know more about this. And this is kind of your chance to do so. You can go back to Abraham Williams' Election Sermon if you kind of like that enlightenment. And again, Williams is kind of in the middle trying to figure all this out. He's liking some of these enlightenment ideas. He doesn't want to give up some of the basic Puritan teachings. So he's kind of in the middle trying to figure it all out. So this might be someone where you say, yeah, he represents the Enlightenment in two ways, but rejects it in another way kind of people. Nat Turner, The Confessions of Nat Turner. Talking about the rebellion of enslaved people in the 1830s. The date went out right out of my head there. But he's doing this right in the middle of the American Romantic period. And he's going to show some of these ideas. He's going to reject some of these ideas. It's a very violent retelling of the slave rebellion that killed over 50 white people, and plus, of course, the retaliation came back and lots of African Americans were killed too. But it's a fascinating person. Is he a hero worthy of writing a graphic novel about? Is he a villain who's a murderer? Very interesting kind of reading, but lots of violence in there. If you it's a little gory, not too graphic, but in some ways it's kind of that makes it even worse. So be warned there. If you don't like violence, don't read this. If you like the birthmark, you're probably going to like The Artist of the Beautiful. Lots of that romantic symbolism, that sentence structure where Hawthorne's trying to take you into a different world. A beautiful short story. Again, if you didn't like The Birthmark and just hated all that symbolism and stuff, you're probably not going to want to choose Hawthorne here. But if you liked it, you're going to love The Artist of the Beautiful. Faulkner, Barn Burning. Faulkner's kind of that classic American modernist. Barn Burning's not quite as obvious with the techniques as maybe a Roast for Emily. Sorry. But you'll see some of those characteristics in there. Zora Neale Hurston, writing during the Harlem Renaissance. Short story, The Gilded Six Bits. She's embracing some of these Harlem Renaissance ideas, also rejecting some of the male writers who's saying we need to uplift our culture and only present us in a good light. Hurston's going to say, like, we don't need our culture uplifted. There's nothing wrong with it as it is, and I'm going to represent it as I see it. She was actually trained as an anthropologist before she started writing short stories. But you'll see some of these modernist techniques. She wasn't writing in a vacuum, of course. Or you can kind of discuss the Harlem Renaissance, and you won't focus on the literary side of the Harlem Renaissance. Don't just give me an overview of the Harlem Renaissance. If you bought the textbook, there's a section in there about the Harlem Renaissance as well. But a very, very good short story. Flannery O'Connor's Good Country People. If you like the Good Man's Hard to Find, you'll probably like Good Country People, that dark humor, wrestling with these existentialist ideas, getting into the grotesque, kind of the exaggeration of certain ideas and certain things. The grotesque can be a little difficult to define, but it's certainly doable if you're interested in Flannery O'Connor. If you didn't like A Good Man's Hard to Find and were just like, oh my gosh, what was that? I don't want to read anything like that again. Don't read Good Country People. James Baldwin, Sonny's Blues, an excellent short story by an excellent writer, African-American writer. This one deals with drug addiction a little bit, if that's a problem for you. Nothing graphic, but it is in there. He deals with these existentialist ideas, postmodernist ideas in many ways, but also kind of working with them, kind of arguing against them maybe just a little bit. It's kind of up to you what you see in that short story. But another excellent short story by an African-American writer. Sherman Alexie, Native American writer. This is what it means to say Phoenix, Arizona. If you've ever seen the movie Smoke Signals, that movie was based on this short story. It's not the same, so don't go watch Smoke Signals and think you've read the story. but very fascinating short story about Native Americans and what do you do if the dominant culture's kind of extinguished your culture and it's left you with this kind of existentialist postmodern world to survive in? Some very fascinating questions going on in that short story. But again, if you're going to pick a Sherman Alexie, you want to pick either post-colonialism, postmodernism, or existentialism. Don't try and do one or two of those. I mean, two or three of those, just one. So one movement, one story. George Saunders, the 400-pound CEO. I'm missing a quote mark there. It's going to be a kind of a classic postmodern story. It's very depressing story. But you'll read the first 3 or 4 paragraphs and you'll decide if you like it or not. But it's a very interesting postmodern approach to short story writing. Black Box, if you'd liked it for Monday's readings, the first 6 sections you might want to use. You can choose this for this essay, and you're definitely going to see some of these postmodern techniques being displayed in there. But again, it's not just you saying yes, this is postmodern. It's you having to define the movement, using good sources, and then relating how the short story represents that movement in 3 ways. And again, those 3 ways have to come from your definition. Finally, another African American writer, Z.Z. Packer, excellent short story Brownies. And again, you can choose postmodernism or postcolonialism to work with there. So lots of good short stories there to choose from. Hopefully a good range there too. So you can find one you really do want to work with, or at least one you hate the least and can write an essay about. However you want to do that. Alrighty. Good place to pause the video if you want to for a second. I'm going to go over a sample essay. Also, here's the literary fiction terms list. List of terms. Hopefully, most of these are fairly familiar to you. We've been kind of using them as we've gone along. If they're not, there's a review of the fiction terms, where it kind of gives you a brief definition and some examples. What I'll probably do is maybe next week is ask you, are there any of these terms you need me to go over in a little more detail? I can do a short video of it, or we can do it through email or something. I don't want to do a whole video just going on every single one of those terms. That's a good way just to wear people down. But those are there. And there's a sample essay here. And that's what I'm about to go over. Download. And you're going to see some commentary on the side, sometimes complaining about it a little bit, but mostly pointing out like, hey, look, he's doing the right thing here. This is a draft of the essay, so this is not a perfect essay by any means. But he does a good job showing what I'm looking for with the essay and having the basics in there. So again, with the essay, the first paragraph, you're going to define the movement using good sources. He's going to define the Enlightenment. He's going to be using Thomas Paine's Common Sense. Should have that italicized there, but anyway. Again, it's not a perfect draft, but it's going to show you what we're looking for here. So the first paragraph, you want to find some good sources out there, and hopefully .edu sources, and you're going to pull these sources together and produce your own definition of the movement, which isn't as easy as it first sounds. And I'm not going to read this word to you. You can read faster than I can talk. But here he's defining the Enlightenment. The Enlightenment was a movement in science, politics, religion, and literature that questioned virtually all accepted truth. Historian Bruce Lancaster explains. He gives a short quote. Notice he introduces the quote, cites the quote. The brackets show a change or addition to the quote, just to clarify it. And he's kind of pulling the different sources in, and doing that and having it not just sound all choppy is not easy. Then he goes to his next source. Then he wants to get into, you need to get into the literary side of these movements. So you want to make sure you're talking about what you want to get to points that you can talk about in your essay. So if you just say the Enlightenment occurred in the 1700s, Well, okay, but that's not really going to be something you can compare your work to the movement with. So here with the Internet Encyclopedia of Philosophy, he's getting into some very specific ideas here about the Enlightenment. These include liberalism, republicanism, toleration, and scientific progress, as well as the universal truth that humans are fundamentally equal creations. Getting some good talking points there for his essay. Those ellipses show he took something out of the quote. Brackets show change to a quote. And once you learn to use these, they come in pretty handy. Ellipses show an omission from the quote. Brings the paragraph to a good close. And that's what the first paragraph should do. Define the movement using 2 or 3 good sources. Pulling those sources in and having them make sense within your paragraph, so it's not just this kind of thing. The second paragraph, you're going to briefly introduce the story or the work. Not all of them are short stories. And this should be a very short paragraph. This one's actually kind of long, but he wasn't padding his paper for the word count, so it wasn't that big a deal. Of Enlightenment authors, Thomas Paine, author of Common Sense, is remembered as one of the most influential. His pamphlet was so popular that John Adams expected common sense to become the common faith of the people during the American Revolution. Generally, you don't want more research. This one's okay. It's pretty short, quick, and he has a point to make there. Kind of saying, hey, this was an important document. America was in need of a message that would galvanize the public at large and convince them of the benefits of independence from a tyrannical government. And common sense entered the scene at just the right time. And then he's going to start leading into his thesis. That's about all the introduction you want. You're assuming your readers read the work, so you don't have to tell us, give a plot summary or anything like that. Please don't do that. Introduce the work, maybe tell us when it was written. No biography. Just get to your thesis. Common sense includes elements of almost every central idea of the Enlightenment, including those of logic and reason, toleration, and liberalism. All 3 of those thesis points coming straight from that first paragraph. I can draw a straight line to it. That's what I'm going to be looking for from yours. Your thesis point should come straight from that first paragraph. And I know I'm repeating that over and over, but that's where students tend to run into a lot of problems. If these thesis points just come from nowhere, or they just come from the lecture notes, that's not good enough. It should be coming from your definition. And be careful with throwing around words. Liberalism can mean quite a few different things, so when he gets to his body paragraph on liberalism, I'm expecting him to define that a little bit more. But the third paragraph is going to talk about the first thesis point, so it should be about logic and reason. The very title of Thomas Paine's Common Sense introduces the pamphlet as a piece of Enlightenment work. Throughout Common Sense, Paine asks his readers to discover the principle of America through the rational thought as indicated by the title. Right? He's saying, like, hey, it's called Common Sense, so he's going to be using logic and reason in this pamphlet. Generally, a short story title should be in quote marks. Common Sense was a pamphlet published independently, so it gets italicized. Then he's going to start talking about how Common Sense represents this logic and reason. He's going to give a quote. Make sure you introduce the quote. Then make sure you discuss the quote. One little problem there, the quote should only be tabbed over once. He's got it tabbed over twice, which MLA changed with the last edition. And he's using long quotes. Be careful, don't overuse long quotes too much. They shouldn't pad your paper for the word count. And you should be discussing all your quotes fully. Quotes should support what you say, not say it for you. So don't say, and as Thomas Paine says, and give me a long quote, and then give me a one sentence and call it a paragraph. You should be, quotes should support what you say. So when you throw a long quote in there, you should have quite a bit of commentary on that, justifying that long quote being in there. That's kind of, if I had one complaint about this draft, this is he's given some long quotes and could discuss them a little bit more. The second paragraph is going to talk about toleration. And he's kind of saying, hey, toleration to the Enlightenment folks meant something maybe a little different than it does to us. So he gives a short definition, telling us what he's thinking about when he's talking about toleration and using that in his essay, which is fine. Has a little bit of research in there. I don't want research in the body of the essay, only quotes from the work. He asked permission to do this, and it was fine. It was short, and again, wasn't padding the paper, and it kind of made sense to put it in there. But But you should not be doing research about somebody else talking about why Thomas Paine was Enlightenment. This should be the student showing me why he thinks Thomas Paine's writing represents the definition in the first paragraph. So be careful there. No research in the body paragraphs. But he's trying to find good examples of toleration within common sense, and using a long quote to support it. And could discuss the long quote maybe just a little bit more, but doing a good job there. The fifth paragraph, the third point, is going to talk about liberalism, and again, he gives a little quick definition there to get us into it. And again, words like that might mean something to different readers. You want to kind of give your own quick definition there. Then he uses some short quotes to support what he's saying. Then at the very bottom, we're going to have the conclusion. And one problem when you're writing as a student, the conclusion is the last thing I'm going to read, so that's the last impression I'm going to have of your writing. But as a student, you're writing, you're just trying to get out of the essay so you can go on to the other 1,000 things you have to do, right? But be careful. Don't just repeat your essay in the conclusion. Make sure it's a well-developed conclusion. He does end with a very good ending sentence there. A pretty good draft there. Has a good works cited page with all his sources on there. Has them cited correctly in the essay. Again, just once you have the works cited page, you're just citing using the first word on the works cited page and a page number if you have one. Using a couple of books there, so we need the page numbers for those. Now, if they're internet sources, you don't have to have the page number there. So again, the draft is meeting the assignment guidelines, doing a good job of what I'm asking for. And I'm going to say this probably 1,000 times in every email I send. Make sure there's no research in the body paragraphs. You should not be going to Spark Notes and repeating what Spark Notes says about your short story. You should be taking the point you developed in your first paragraph and doing your own work there. So be careful. And I can't stop you from going on the internet, obviously. But be careful that when students get low grades on this essay, it's generally for plagiarism or not doing their own work in the body of the essay. The body of the essay should be all you. Using quotes to support what you're saying, but should be your ideas relating the short story to the movement. So kind of, again, a formulaic essay. I'm telling you what I want in each paragraph, so make sure you do what I want in each paragraph for a good grade on the essay. I think that's all I have to say. I've been talking for almost half an hour. Again, the nice thing about YouTube videos is you can take a break in the middle of you can just pause and shut me up for a second, which is kind of neat. But if you have questions as we go along, be sure to ask them. I'm here to help. And we will talk to you later. Bye-bye.